Well, hello and welcome back to episode 45. And as I call it, back to my prolific nonsense. I started viewing Goliath on Amazon Prime when we had a 30-day pass about 2 years ago, and I saw the first two seasons of this compelling series. And we finally decided to purchase Amazon Prime, and I started back and viewing the series and revisited season two. And unfortunately, I'm just starting the last season, season four. And the reason I say unfortunately is that I don't want it to end. This series for me has to be the most intoxicating, intriguing, hypnotic, and captivating series I've ever seen. I'm hooked once again, and I very much enjoy the surrealism and dreamlike state of the series. It's magical stuff. 5 stars is considered the best rating you could give. I give it 10 stars. And Billy Bob Thornton is tremendous. He's perfect for the role, and the supporting cast is quite impressive also. And as I said before, the problem for me now is that I don't want it to end, but there's nothing I can do about it. Dysfunctional is a word that still circulates today, though maybe not as much as it used to be heard in conversation. But I like to think that just about anyone could be considered somewhat dysfunctional in today's complex and fast paced world. It's like drinking from the fire hose. Or am I only using this as an excuse that I'm comparatively or moderately dysfunctional? Sure, I am. And I like to think of myself as an idealist grounded in realism, but whatever that means. But it sounds promising, my own definition. All right, I'm going to talk about this topic of consciousness. And what is it exactly? Can we define it? There are a lot of theories and beliefs surrounding it. Some folks claim that consciousness is what it isn't, that the more we think, the more confused we get, and the less conscious we become. I'm not a scientist or doctor or researcher, but what I am is very curious about this subject. I find it fascinating. I've touched on this subject of perception in previous videos, that our lives may simply be a string of perceptions that are, for lack of a better term, illusions. We have a conversation with someone, and as humans, we look for connections, relatable terms, subjects, and identity for yourself and for the other, but we can't really reach the other side of the conversation. We don't actually know what they're really thinking or what they're feeling. It's all a perception. And don't get me wrong, we all know this all along, or at least most of us do. I, for one, tend to be a bit too quick in my reactions and assessments. But I do realize that I'm running on guesses, doubts, miscues, and illusions. When you really think about this subject, you come to understand that it's kind of a game. We know that we don't really understand what the other side is thinking, and that's the best part. The judgments, perceptions, and consciousness is fleeting and surreal. If it wasn't as such, it wouldn't be interesting. Take, for instance, the use of psychedelic drugs or alcohol or transcendental meditation or any form of meditation. Where do we go with these mind altering states, and why do we, humans, I would guess certainly most humans, identify with those alternate states? They tend to expand our horizons, loosen our inhibitions, and elevate our common everyday thoughts and emotions. But you can't live day to day functioning solely on these expansions. We pay too much of a price for that exchange. The National Library of Medicine and National Center for Biotechnology information state that, like ketamine, serotonergic psychedelics are capable of robustly increasing neurogenesis, and that these changes in neuronal structure are accompanied by increased synapse number and function as measured by fluorescence microscopy and electrophysiology. And I knew all this. I looked this up. In short, these psychedelics work well with depressed and related disorders. In other words, they do expand our thought processes and provide a feeling of euphoria. So we do have ways of expanding our consciousness, since we as humans tend to get a bit too entrenched into our daily lives and responsibilities, leaving us quite often bored and fatigued. And one of the reasons I bring up this question is that, for one, I have never possessed a very good attention span. I've gotten by in life with this attribute somehow, but no one knows me like my wife, and she would gladly testify to this. I get bored easily and tend to drift, and this may be the reason that once I was released from the prison of work and labor, I didn't want to return to that world of supervisors, duties, and responsibilities, and the prison of their time, not mine. However, there are always duties and responsibilities, but now I just have less of them and more time to myself. The thing I miss the most, without a doubt, is the people I worked with daily and interacted with. And I hope they miss me, but they probably don't. I was employed by Amtrak for 8.5 years and worked in New York City for 34 years as a research analyst in advertising and marketing. And like any form of employment, it could be demanding, but what made it memorable and enjoyable was the people I worked with. I have a ton of great memories within the 3 different jobs I held after graduating from college. And I became to many of my coworkers, believe it or not, somewhat of a light touch, a sidebar, a bit of a clown, even a wisecracking clown, or the first one to laugh at something which I found to be very acceptable in all my employed years. I really believe that just about everyone alive enjoys humor, comedy, absurdity, and wit. And I feel very sorry for people who don't. And I don't know anyone who doesn't enjoy humor. In my assessment of my clowning, wisecracks, and one-liners, and always looking for the humorous escape, especially in New York City, I found that both men and women appreciated it equally. Work does have a tendency of being a bit too serious and intense, so the humor softened things up a bit. And as you've probably noted, I've drifted from my topic of what is consciousness. Maybe consciousness is what it isn't. And maybe we'll revisit this topic on another episode if I'm still conscious of it, and I will end here.